What's up, everyone? So today I want to share with you a novel Anki pacing strategy that I've been using to get through the monumental amount of flashcards I usually have left on a daily basis because I procrastinate. So I figured I'd share it with you, and if you enjoy it, try it out. Let me know what you think. Let's get to it. So here's the previous Anki pacing strategy that I used to use, which was just the fact that I would do Pomodoro intervals, and for 25 minutes I would just try to do Anki cards as many as I could, and then I would take a 5-minute break, and then I would do another 25-minute interval, and then I'd take a 5-minute break, and then so on and so forth. I actually have a video on my Pomodoro technique right up there, but that's kind of how I used to do Anki. The positive about this technique was that it would allow me to be focused and be really efficient. But the negatives that I've started to realize, at least in the past few weeks, is that I burn out really fast. So after doing like 3 or 4 of these Pomodoro sessions, I just get really tired, and sometimes I start realizing I'm doing cards that I've seen, 4 or 5 times, and I've gotten those cards wrong multiple times, and I just wasn't being as efficient. And I think one of the reasons for this is when you do something for a long time, like anything you do for like more than 3 hours or even 2 hours in a row, you have diminishing returns for that, right? Like we've all seen it. If you try to do a paper for 3 hours in a row, maybe you'll be really efficient in like the first 30 to 45 minutes. But after that, it can be really difficult because you'll still keep hitting the same hurdle, in our case, the same Anki cards over and over again. And your mind kind of gets accustomed to that stimulus and gets desensitized to it. And so for me, I started realizing, now that I do like almost 900 cards on a daily basis, this strategy was not working for me, and I almost took way longer than I should doing the cards. So my new Anki strategy is I still do like 25 minutes of productive things and then 5 minutes of non-productive and then 25 minutes. I try to keep that pacing. But now what I do is at the beginning, I just do 60 cards in my 25-minute block, and then the rest of the 25 minutes I'll spend on doing something else. So like learning a new topic, reviewing old medical topic, responding to emails, doing some other task aside from Anki that is still productive. And the reason why this helps is 60 cards is actually small enough for me to say, oh, that only takes like 5 to 10 minutes. I'll be done with that. Another thing I can do is add in 60 cards before big breaks. So let's say I'm about to go to the gym. I'll say, oh, I should just do 60 cards right now. And 60 is a small enough number that you can squeeze it in before any big task. So let's say I'm going to go do my dishes. Well, before I can do my dishes, I say that I need to do 60 cards. And I say, okay, whatever, that's only 5 minutes. But as you do this more and more over the day, you can actually finish a decent chunk of cards. And you do them in these small avenues of time that you didn't know really existed unless you actually add them in this method. And personally for me, I think there is a psychological benefit to this because I'm a runner, right? I know that in running a race, you always start fast because you have a lot of energy, and you tend to end fast because you know you're almost done. But in the middle, you actually sometimes slow down and whatever. And that's just psychologically speaking because you know that you still have a lot more to do, and that kind of decreases your motivation. But by doing 60 card increments, you actually basically what you're doing is breaking a long, big race. Let's say you had like 900 Anki cards. You're breaking up that long, big race into smaller races that you have to do throughout the day. And because of that, you actually end up having bigger spurts of energy. So for example, you actually finish 60 cards in 5 to 10 minutes. And let's say you do 60 cards later. You'll still finish them in 5 to 10 minutes. As opposed to if you were doing 900 cards in a row, your first 60 cards may be really fast, but a 60 card interval in the middle of the 900 interval total is going to be way slower than your first interval because you're just burnt out. And so I actually try to do this now. I break down my big thing into 60 card chunks. So for example, it's 2 o'clock right now and I'm about to shower, but I said to myself, before I shower, I'm going to do 60 cards. When I get out of the shower, I'm going to eat lunch, but before I start eating lunch, I'll do another 60 cards. And what do you know? I've done 120 cards just in the method of, these 2 big tasks. More important than that, instead of getting cards wrong 4 to 5 times, because you're doing them in spurts, you actually have time to reflect on the ones you got wrong. And so when you do them again, you're less likely to get them wrong. At least that's what I've found based on my experience. And so hopefully you guys found this helpful. I will try to show you some of these in action. I'll actually do a 60 card spurt right now. Obviously it won't be as fast because I'm recording myself and I'm conscious and sometimes I'll even speak. But in general, it tends to go relatively quick. So why don't we do that now? I'll show you how I do this in real time. All right, so the first 60 card chunk that I'm just going to go ahead and do is I'll do my emergency medicine cards, I'll do my peds cards, and then I'll do my internal medicine. That adds up to about 60. It's maybe a bit more, but let's just do them together and we'll go from there. So now let's get to it. One way to open up the air day is to do the jaw thrust maneuver. Yes, and basically what this is asking is how do you do the jaw thrust maneuver? You move the jaw up with your 3 fingers. You kind of allow the airway to be open like that. Yep. Good. What are the 4 indications for an EFAST exam? Hematoma, intraperitoneal bleeding. I actually don't know this. Pericardial effusion pneumothorax, yeah. Why is it important to ask about previous? Because that can be a reason for a lower GI bleed. Mnemonic for things that are great includes revs. So it's exertional, right shoulder, vomiting, and sweating. The mnemonic for indications for fast exam is hip. Hemothorax, intraperitoneal bleeding, pneumothorax, and pericardial effusion. Hemothorax is the first one. When differentiating between whether someone has a seizure, important lab that you can order. Lactate. Clinically, you think it's the #1 diagnosis, not explained by any other symptom, tachycardia, hemoptysis, malignancy, and immobilization. Yeah, perfect. EFAST. I think it stands for extended. I always get this wrong. Extended Focused Assessment with Sonography and Trauma. The first one you look at is the right upper quadrant, in between the liver and the kidney. Yep. One way to open up the airway is to do the head tilt. Yep. So the head tilt, chin lift. Yep. 4 findings. I already just said this. Previous PE, pericardial effusion, This one's pneumothorax. Radiation to right shoulder. Yeah. Is it that beta thal major? Because in beta thal major, you knock out both of the beta globin genes, so you actually need to express the delta and the gamma, as opposed to in beta thal minor, you only decrease 1 beta gene, so you still have the other one, so you don't necessarily need to increase regulation of the gamma, and so you don't get formation of the fetal. I said that right. What is the mnemonic for assessing the indications of an EFAST exam? I think it was hip, right? Hemothorax, intraperitoneal bleeding, pneumothorax, and pericardial effusion. Yeah. Tachycardia. No other disease can cause it. Extended focus assessment with sonography and trauma. Yes. Okay. So with just like that, you saw how I finished this. I actually did it relatively quickly. I think it only took like 3 minutes or 5 minutes. And now I'll do a pediatric one. Elementary, maternal imaging, Infocare, and NeoSure. Last part. 4 hours. Red to red. It should be red from the bump to the bump. Yeah. It's false positive because there's epithelial cells. What is thought to be responsible for psychoactive effects? The endocannabinoid type 1, because it's in the CS, central nervous system. Cephalohematoma, polycythemia vera, and ABO incompatibility, so when the mom's blood type does not match with the baby's. Yeah. Chronic hepatitis is defined as ALT elevated for more than 6 months. Yeah. Someone is from Honduras. What general species are you worried about? I think you're worried about strongyloides and leishmaniasis. Yes. How would you look differently if you were to use spironolactone? Spironolactone is potassium sparing, so it decreases potassium but it increases sodium. Length is greater than 15 minutes. Frequency is more than 1 in 24 hours, and it usually is focal. Ampicillin plus tazobactam or sulbactam. Why does increased intracranial pressure present with Cushing's triad? Because increased intracranial pressure leads to peripheral vasoconstriction, which leads to bradycardia, which then leads to decreased breathing because there's no blood flow getting to the brain. Yep. Gastroparesis. Ophthalmocele is when it's covered by the peritoneum. Gastroschisis is when it's not. Yep. Let's see what I have. Typical indication of gastric lavage. Toxic ingestion. Okay, so just like that, that was actually 3 minutes. That took me 3 minutes to do. So far I've taken about like 8 minutes. Um, and I'm obviously going a bit slower, but let's do my internal medicine one now, and go from there. Ain't it a shame that these drugs cause meningitis? NSAIDs? No. They don't actually cause meningitis, they cause a drug-induced meningitis because it gives rise to the same levels in the CSF that you would see in meningitis. That's the only reason that's mentioned. I'd say any opening of your body, so like the mouth or the anus, and also the limbs. Yep. Primary is when a clot forms by itself. Secondary is when there's something else that leads to the clot. Yep. Osler's nodes are painful. Janeway lesions are not. And that's all I remember. Yeah. I guess Osler's nodes are caused by immune complexes. That's an important distinction. Fulminant is when you have hypotension, ileus, or I think hypotension or ileus with a C. diff infection. Or megacolon. Okay. Through which bone? It runs through the petrous ridge. Yep. Ileus is when the bowels just stop moving. Yep. Perineoplastic syndromes are syndromes where they produce antibodies to something else in the human body that leads to other symptoms. Yeah. Anti-NMDA receptor encephalitis, exactly. With endocarditis, Janeway lesions are blanching. And they're caused by, we just talked about it, septic emboli. The Osler's nodes are caused by the immune complexes. The indication for 0.45% saline is maintenance fluids. If you have gram-positive endocarditis, osteomyelitis, those are the big ones. Yeah, osteomyelitis also. Okay. So this is actually just a mnemonic I have for causes of acute mental status. C is actually cancer. Name 5 metabolic causes that can lead to altered mental status. And another thing I have is Wu-Tang gland, vitamin B12, uremia, TSH, ammonemia. G means hypoglycemia, and N is just hyponatremia. I mean, you should always check an A1C, of course. This shows pancreatitis. Oh, it's effective against Pseudomonas. Yeah. This shows the contrast building up in the kidneys, if you can look at that. Yep. Where's the line of the hematoma? It's basically showing density. So I think when you have a hematoma, it's blood, and blood basically will separate out into its non-dense and dense fluid. So, yep. You know if a particular bacterium has evolved end-stage beta-lactamase adaptation. End-stage beta-lactamases are basically how bacteria are resistant to penicillins. And specifically, you know if there's a specific adaptation called end-stage beta-lactamase, which is when they're resistant to ceftriaxone. Yeah, see? Resistance to ceftriaxone. Hiccups are caused by irritation to the phrenic nerve. Aortic jet velocity is used to diagnose aortic stenosis, and if it's greater than 4 millimeters per second is when you have aortic stenosis, so right there. Vitamin B1, thiamine, and 500 milligrams, I believe. Obstructive disease is less than 80%. The right gastroepiploic artery is coming from the gastroduodenal artery. Ultrasound. What amount of betazone is equal to 100 milligrams of prednisone? I believe it's 1.2 milligrams. Yep. Lactase dehydrogenase catalyzes pyruvate to lactate. Yep. Perfect. 2,3 and AVF is inferior. The D here stands for drugs or delirium. Yep. So Janeway lesions are immune complexes. Osler's nodes are immune complexes. Janeway lesions are septic emboli. Yep. All right, perfect. So it's only been 2:16. I started at 2:07. It is 9 minutes that took me to do, and that's because I was talking to you guys. Usually it'll take me anywhere between 4 and 7 minutes, and then I have the next 18 minutes to do whatever I want. And more importantly, even if you're not really studying, let's say you're trying to go out or you're doing a small task and you're about to start cleaning, one thing to do is to say, oh, I should just go ahead and do 60 cards before I do it. And that's like a good 6 to 7 minute thing that you can do, knock out, and then do your task. And it just helps. It kind of breaks it up throughout the day. And you'll see that now I have like maybe 700 cards left, but now I'll do another 60 maybe later on, and I'll have 620, and I'll just chip away at this throughout the day. And it's something that I found to be helpful, and I hope it helps you too. Oh, and of course, like, comment, share, and subscribe. Please. Thanks for supporting me. Bye.